Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Taoiseach, first of all, I'd like to start this morning by condemning the terrorist attack in London last night when a soldier was barbarically killed, and to say our sympathies and thoughts are with the family of the deceased soldier and with the British people in an appalling moment. Taoiseach, I think you would agree that the early years of any child are the most fundamental in terms of the development of that child, in terms of social education development, self-esteem, self-confidence. They're the critical years, the 0 to 3 years. The child will learn and develop more then than they will for the rest of their lives. So reports that a forthcoming RTE primetime programme will reveal, on standards in creches, will reveal very damaging and worrying mistreatment of children, will cause, I think, widespread alarm and concern to people across the country, and will cause significant distress to thousands of parents who have their children in childcare facilities. In one creche, we understand, and we've learned from media reports, that a staff member has been dismissed and 3 others suspended. Staff members have been suspended in another creche that was the spotlight of this particular programme. A meeting was held last Thursday night in Malahide, where parents were briefed on the RT's primetime programme's findings. And one creche owner is reported in today's media as describing the actions of staff as, quote, wholly inappropriate, inexcusable and unacceptable. And the owner has actually viewed the undercover footage taken by RTE. The parents concerned are understandably furious with developments, and I understand that the footage took place in the room where the younger children are kept. And children being shouted at, bad language being used, bottles being thrown and so on like that. Absolutely unacceptable and disgraceful behaviour, I believe, forms the content of this. Now, I think all of us in the House would be very concerned at such reports. And I would ask you in the first instance, Taoiseach, if you could indicate to me that if the Minister for Children has been made aware of these allegations and these revelations, if you could confirm this morning the nature of the HSE and Garda inquiries into these matters, and can you give reassurances to parents across the country whose children are in childcare facilities that their children are safe in such facilities, and that there is a robust inspectorial regime that has the capacity to identify this type of behaviour and mistreatment of children in creches, and that the resources available to the HSE and to the inspectorial authorities are adequate enough to discover and identify these type of failings.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to join with Deputy Martin in condemning the terrorist attack in London yesterday on a soldier. It was a shocking attack, and I am conveying on behalf of the Irish Government our deepest sympathy with the British Government, and particularly with the family and friends and colleagues of the soldier who was attacked. I also agree with Deputy Martin that the early years of a child's life are critical, and that every parent who arranges for the care of their children, particularly their young children, has a right to expect that those children will be properly cared for and will not be subjected to any kind of mistreatment, whether verbal or otherwise. There have been allegations, as we know, and reports that a number of creches in North and South County Dublin are being investigated by the Gardaí and by the HSE following allegations of mistreatment of children, which it is believed have been recorded secretly by RTE. These allegations tap into every parent's worst nightmare. Parents who are dropping their children off to a creche this morning need to have confidence and trust in the people who are looking after their children. As a government, we are deeply concerned about these reports. It is shocking and disappointing that any person whose role is to care for our youngest children could behave in the manner described. The mistreatment or abuse of children is unacceptable in any setting, and any and all such incidents should and must be reported to the relevant authorities, as has rightly happened in this case. I understand that the Gardaí and the HSE are investigating this matter. Where a parent has concerns regarding practice in a creche, they can report this to the HSE, who have a childcare inspectorate. Where such concerns relate to child protection matters, the HSE works with the Gardaí as per the Children First guidance. With respect to this case, I understand that the HSE will be shown the footage later today, at which time they will be in a better position to understand the extent of the problems. In view of some of the reports, however, the HSE has already been in touch with the Gardaí, and I understand that RTE are currently liaising with the Gardaí in this case. So there is an investigation that is underway into these allegations. Clearly, what we have to date is what has been reported. The HSE, the matter has been reported to the HSE, and they are conducting an investigation, and they're conducting it in conjunction with the Gardaí.
Thank you.
I thank the Taoiseach for his reply, and I think it essentially confirms very disturbing information, a very disturbing situation where investigations are underway in terms of mistreatment of children in creches in this city. I think it also highlights, though, the issue around the inspections and the monitoring of standards in such facilities and the adequacy of such inspections. I know that some time ago the Minister was asked whether the Health Information and Quality Authority should be tasked with ensuring that standards are adhered to in private and public creche facilities as well. Now, I think the parliamentary reply was somewhat equivocal on that, on an expanded role for the Health Information and Quality Authority. Currently, it inspects under Section 38 and 39 of the Health Act of 2004. I think that by any objective perspective, the Health and Information Quality Authority, most people would accept, has been extremely high quality in terms of its work to date in the various areas that it has worked in. And I think the revelations that are emerging do call for a reassessment. The Minister in the reply said the Department will continue to review and monitor the regulatory environment for preschool services. I think there's a very significant wake-up call in the context of the revelations that we've just heard about and that you've confirmed, or at least you've confirmed allegations into those incidents, do really call for a stronger role for the Health Information and Quality Authority. And I would ask if you could confirm that the Minister would be of a disposition to give an enhanced role to the Health and Information and Quality Authority in this arena. And secondly, if you could indicate when the Children First Bill will be published, and indeed the Child and Family Support Agency Bill, which are critical pieces of legislation that have been awaited for quite some time now. If you could give some indication as to when they're going to be published.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to say that the Minister for Children is giving the highest priority to the reports which we have heard and to the investigations which are underway, and she is and will be receiving up-to-date reports on the progress of those investigations, and she is taking a direct and a personal interest in those investigations. I should say that, first of all, in relation to the inspections of childcare facilities, that in each of the years, the last 2 years, each of 2011 and 2012, over 2,600 childcare providers were subject to inspection by the HSE. I think basically what we need to have here is that parents are assured that the Irish childcare sector is safe and that practitioners are committed to ensuring the highest standards of care for children. For that reason, the Government has brought in updated Children First guidance on child protection and is currently finalising the legislation to put compliance with Children First on a statutory footing. The Government has also brought in the National Vetting Bureau Bill, which puts on a statutory basis the mandatory vetting of persons who are working with children or indeed with other vulnerable people. There has been a problem, as you know, with regard to the processing of applications for vetting, and the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform has granted sanction for an additional 25 staff to be redeployed from the Department of Agriculture to the Garda Central Vetting Unit. And these personnel are currently undergoing training and will be operational within a very short period of time. The Government is very conscious of the continuing imperative to deliver improvements in quality in the early years of childcare provision. HICWA has for the first time been given responsibility for child protection standards. The actual inspection of the childcare facilities is a matter for the HSE and for the Inspectorate, which has that responsibility. And in respect of the cases which are now in the public domain and which are the subject of the RTE documentary, those cases are being investigated by the HSE and are being investigated by the Gardaí, and we're taking the issue very seriously indeed.
Thank you. Deputy Jonathan O'Brien.
Thank you, Town Caller. Taoiseach, today I'd like to raise with you the growing concern in regard to the delivery of mental health care provision, which is having a profound impact on some of our most vulnerable citizens, particularly young people. A recent report, Taoiseach, by the Inspectorate of Mental Health Services found that children and teenagers needing psychiatric care are being denied admission to facilities, while beds within some of those facilities go unoccupied as a result of staff shortages. And depending on which report you read, Taoiseach, it is estimated that at times up to half of the beds within these facilities are not being utilised. And this is at a time when there are growing waiting lists and growing waiting times for admission, in some cases up to 6 months. And we've had cases where some parents of vulnerable children are being asked to send their children to facilities in Dublin, in the Munster region. In Cork, for example, Taoiseach, in one such child and adolescent unit, only 12 of the 20 beds available within that unit last March were being utilised, despite on the day that the Inspectorate visited the unit there were 15 people waiting to be admitted. Now I'm sure, Taoiseach, you would agree that that is unacceptable. And as recent as December, the mental health inspectors expressed concern over the welfare of a vulnerable child in the Cork area who was admitted to an adult psychiatric unit. They described the appalling situation where the child in question was left isolated in a bedroom with no therapeutic intervention apart from medication. So, Taoiseach, can I ask what has been done to address the lack of psychiatric units for children and young people, and what has been done to ensure that child and adolescent units have the necessary staff in place to allow the full utilisation of the beds available within those facilities?
Thank you.
Well, first of all, can I agree that I think it is fair to say that the area of mental health has been an area of our health services which has not received sufficient attention. This government, however, has decided to give mental health and the issues of mental health a very high priority and has given specific responsibility to Minister of State Kathleen Lynch to address those issues, and she's making very significant progress in improving the mental health services within our health system. There was a special allocation of €35 million for mental health, which was announced in Budget 12, and that was used primarily to further strengthen community mental health teams in both adult and children's mental health services. 414 mental health posts were approved as part of Budget 2012, and as of the 30th of April this year, 383 posts have been filled or are under offer or awaiting clearance. In addition to that, she has also dedicated funds in particular to advance suicide prevention initiatives and has been working on that issue. She's taking the lead in committing to implement the recommendations of Reach Out, which is a national strategy for action on suicide prevention. So right across the whole mental health area, a very significant amount of progress has been made by Minister of State Lynch. She is continuing, together with Minister Riley, to work on the development of our mental health services, to give them the priority that they deserve, and to address the continuing challenges which I think we all acknowledge exist in the mental health area.
Thank you. Deputy O'Brien.
I want to thank the Taoiseach for his reply. Taoiseach, you mentioned the 414 posts which were due to be filled, and as of April you said 383 of them have been filled. Can I get some indication on when it is hoped that the full allocation of posts will be completed? And also, it doesn't take into account any retirements within that area, so I would be interested in the net figure, Taoiseach. Taoiseach, you mentioned the area of suicide, and I'm sure you're aware of the recent report which was published by the 3T charities, which made for some shocking reading, and some of the stats within that report were very worrying. It indicated that Ireland has the 4th highest suicide rate in the EU for those aged between 15 and 24. And Taoiseach, it's simply unacceptable to have a situation where facilities that are in place to help young children and adolescents who are suffering from mental health issues are not being fully utilised. So, Taoiseach, can I again ask, would you accept that more needs to be done in the terms of counselling services for those at risk and their families, as well as the provision of information and education? And can you give a commitment that the provision of funding to address the whole area of suicide prevention and mental health care for our young children and adolescents will be made a priority in the upcoming budget?
Thank you. Well, two parts to the question, Ceann Comhairle. First of all, in relation to the numbers of staff, as I've said, of the 414 that were approved in Budget 2012, 318 have been filled or are under offer or awaiting clearance, and progress is being made in relation to the remainder. I should say also that in Budget 2013, a further €35 million was allocated for the development of mental health services, and that includes the recruitment of 477 additional staff to implement these measures, and I understand that the HSE are making arrangements to commence the recruitment process very shortly. I want to welcome the Suicide in Ireland survey, which was published in Monday, and that certainly is a very welcome contribution to the debate on suicide. The funding that I've referred to earlier, some of that funding will be used to advance further suicide prevention initiatives and to initiate the provision of psychological and counselling services in primary care, specifically for people with mental health problems. As I've said, Minister Lynch is committed to implementing the recommendations of the National Strategy for Action on Suicide Prevention. I'm happy to be able to inform the House that the National Office of Suicide Prevention has implemented most of the recommendations in the strategy, and the Office is reviewing its current activities to make the most of our available resources, including looking at best practice internationally. Priority suicide prevention initiatives identified for this year include further development of existing national mental health awareness campaigns to promote help seeking, increased training for GPs and practice staff, building the capacity of communities to respond to suicide, implementation of the clinical care programme for self-harm, which will include the funding of nursing posts within the hospital emergency departments, training of acute hospital staff on suicide and self-harm intervention, and the development of the SCAN model, which allows for crisis interventions at primary care, and the continued investment in voluntary agencies providing services. The annual budget for suicide prevention increased in 2012 to over 12 million. 7.1 million is administered by the National Office of Suicide Prevention. That included an additional 3 million from the special allocation for mental health, and that was used to fund voluntary and statutory agencies delivering services in the area of prevention, intervention and research. The remaining 5 million is available regionally to fund resource officers for suicide prevention, self-harm liaison nurses in hospital emergency departments and local suicide prevention initiatives. In 2013, a further 1 million is being provided to the office, bringing the total available to over 8 million. A special programme of measures to further advance suicide prevention in 2013 is currently being developed and will be announced by Minister of State Lynch in due course.
Thank you. Deputy Matthew McGrath.
I'd like to offer my sympathies, indeed sympathies of the technical group, to the community of Woolwich in South London, and say how much we absolutely are filled with revulsion at what happened yesterday. Taoiseach, we've heard a lot of talk in the past few days about the need for accountability and transparency in Irish politics, especially at ministerial level. We've heard that the Minister for Justice, time and time again, that it was his judgment, and that it was both necessary and in the public interest, that he point out that Deputy Wallace had himself been beneficiary of discretion exercised by Garda Síochána. The Minister also said that he made the point not to make a political charge, nor for any personal benefit, but to defend the integrity of Garda Síochána. So it is in that context, Taoiseach, and strictly with those concerns in mind, that I ask, could you please inform the House, if either you or an Taoiseach are aware, as to whether the Minister himself was stopped at a Garda checkpoint in Dublin in late February and March 2011. This was in the intervening period between the general election and shortly before he was appointed Minister for Justice to that august office. Are you or the Taoiseach aware whether he was cautioned on that occasion by a Garda at the checkpoint under the Road Traffic Act 2010, or whether the Gardaí on that occasion used their discretion? This would seem to have a very high bearing on the whole debate. Whether he was asked to produce a specimen of breath under the mandatory breath testing provision contained in the Road Traffic Act 2010, and whether his behaviour and reaction to this request was appropriate and indeed cordial, or whether he attempted to use the privilege of travelling to and from the Dáil as a means of avoiding giving the breath test or being stopped at a Garda checkpoint, and as to whether in fact he did give a specimen of breath on that occasion. Finally, Taoiseach, will you, in the public interest and to facilitate the greater transparency, will you, Taoiseach, in the public interest and to facilitate greater transparency, call on the Minister to make available immediately the Garda report which exists into that incident? Thank you.
Taoiseach.
I have no idea. If the Minister... I have no idea if the Minister for Justice was stopped by Gardaí before the election, after the election, whenever. How would I know that? The only thing I can say to you, Deputy McGrath, is that I remember being stopped myself, breath tested at Galloping Green on my way home one night. Happily, I passed it. I was stopped on another occasion at the Loughlinstown roundabout. I can account for myself. but I certainly can't account as to when any other member of this House, or any other member of the public for that matter, was stopped by Gardaí, breathalyzed or cautioned or whatever. I think that is a matter, as we've discussed here over the course of the last couple of days, it's a matter between the Gardaí and the individuals concerned. I have no idea what you are talking about.
Deputy McGrath.
I thank the Taoiseach. Thanks to Taoiseach. I don't raise it as a joke. Yes. And I think you're missing the point, Taoiseach, if I might suggest. It's the Minister of Justice we're talking about now. It's because of the events since he was appointed Minister of Justice and the way he has treated the public, and indeed in Garda Síochána. The events of last week involving the fixed penalty points constantly highlighted the principles that there must be one law in this country that applies to all citizens. It also highlighted the ongoing need to restore and maintain public confidence in the institutions of the state. I think that's a duty that you have, Taoiseach, and not allow the perception to develop that there is a complete double standard operating here. So, Taoiseach, I mean, I hope you think it's funny, like many other things your government seem to think is funny that's happening to this country, the misery the people are put into. And I don't expect you to know, but I would expect you to inform yourself and ask the Taoiseach to be informed and to clarify that matter and ask the Minister to come back before the House again and make a statement and clarify and make the Garda report available. Marcia de Hull.
Well, as I said, I mean, I don't have any information in relation to what the deputy is raising. I think the issue here, and in relation to the contact that the public have with the Gardaí on road traffic matters, and I think it's where most people come into direct contact with the enforcement of the law. I think the critical issue is, first of all, that the law is applied fairly and evenly to everybody. Secondly, as we have discussed here on a number of occasions, there is a discretion, there is a judgment, if you like, there's a common sense approach that Gardaí are expected to take, and that by and large they do take in the way in which they apply the law. And I think it is appropriate that that continues. And I also think in the context of the fixed penalty points regime that it continues in that regard. It is also important that there is confidence all round that the law is being enforced in an even-handed way, and that there isn't any special treatment for some people as against other people. I think that's a very important principle that needs to be applied. And thirdly, again, as I think we've had aired here over the course of the last number of days, I think there are also issues of privacy that arise in this case. And not just, may I also say, not just privacy in relation to any contact or reports that the Gardaí give to ministers or whatever, but also, I think, privacy in relation to some reports that we see appearing in the public domain from time to time, which, can only be one can only wonder about where they, where they have been sourced. So I think it is important that we bear those principles in mind and ensure that there is public confidence in the application of the law, particularly in this area of road traffic offences, which is the main area where most people encounter the enforcement of the law and have direct contact with members of the Garda Síochána.
Thank you.